Hey, it's news time. There is a lot to cover today, so before we get stuck into the Dragonflight stuff, I'm gonna rocket you through the rest. It's actually some neat stuff. Blizzard are juicing up buzz in World of Warcraft with a 50% XP buff for the modern servers from now till the launch of Season 4. So, nice. For me, really, that's just good if you want to get more characters ready so you can have more Dragonflight professions. Now also, the fated raid schedule for Season 4 has been released. It's essentially what we would expect, with eventually every single fated raid being open at the same time. In case you didn't know, fated is just the little nomenclature or whatever that increases difficulty and loot to Season 4 levels and adds on an affix. Initially, it's on one raid per week. Finally then, Wrath Classic. Seems like it's going to drop September 26th, according to an asset that Blizzard accidentally published on the Classic site and then removed. Whoops. Okay, streams. 4 channels of content. An upcoming video game, plus a few other things we're working on. We're doing a lot here, so if you would like to support us in our mission of, honestly, just making cool shit, you can check out our Patreon. It's the best way to support us, and you can even get your class-themed loot by our development team. Class cards, creature pins, the art that one day might turn into something more. Don't worry, not an NFT. And it's Machinist this month, and I mean, come on, the axolotl pin. How do we not have that shit? It's awesome. Of course, it helps us make the cool shit. You get some cool shit. And guess what? It's a win-win. That's the best. Okay, Dragonflight. Well, isn't this what we all wanted to hear? Ian told Crandor that they're going to release more frequent but smaller patches. Now, this is absolutely fantastic news, and it's totally the opposite of Shadowlands. Legion expansion was lauded for its aggressive patch cycle, as was Mists of Pandaria, where we saw 0.1 and 0.3 be smaller patches, while 0.2 and 0.4 were pretty damn large patches. Now, an approach like this is what a live game actually needs to survive. It just ensures as well that the whole game experience is not forced to march to the drumbeat of what makes a reasonably paced raid season, which is an odd thing to wrap the entire game experience around. So hopefully this means narrative updates, side content, minor features, and just stuff that actually builds out the world and gives you something cool to do. Hopefully that can make it in between raids. For example, in an earlier interview, Ian said that they are looking to do something a bit like the Mage Tower, and it's likely going to be themed around the Bronze Dragons and the Deaths of Chromie scenario. I mean, would that not be an awesome thing to drop right in the middle of a raid tier? You know, 3 months in, you're a bit bored. Oh look, there's new shit to do. That is what WoW has needed but lacked. Indeed, in late WoD and Legion, the developers talked about wanting raids to not hold back other forms of content. And in Legion, they actually largely achieved that. People may forget this, but Broken Shore and Argus, like patch zones, they came out before their associated raid tiers by quite some time. Right, a good plan, and of course with the addition of a whole new development team to Warcraft, perhaps it's actually one they're going to be able to pull off. Only time will tell. I like the idea, and speaking of time, there's something else. Ha! The time skip has finally happened. Blizzard have yet to confirm exactly by how much, but yes, perhaps years have actually passed since the end of Shadowlands. Now, we actually know this via dialogue that appeared in a recent alpha build, which is actually the thing that does throw a little bit of doubt or suspicion into this, but basically, people who had done certain quests on a past build of the alpha saw a new dialogue trigger. Now, we're not sure if this was a bug, so this could still be a scrapped idea, but to put the whole thing briefly, Matthias Shaw says that it's been several years since we returned from the Shadowlands. What is several? Well, I'm thinking 3 to 5. Now, if true, this would allow for a period of peace and stabilization amongst the factions. It could also make the game world and its timeline just feel a little bit more sensible, instead of a humongous existential threat every single 2 years. It also opens up the way for the likes of the Forsaken to just be more settled in. But doing that time skip also puts certain expectations on Blizzard. Where are the Night Elves? Where have they started building their new settlements? What's going on? So as you can see, it's a fantastic narrative opportunity, but it's also years to fill in. Now, A Song of Ice and Fire author George R.R. Martin was originally going to have a time skip after Storm of Swords. Why did he not do that? Well, he felt too many flashback chapters. Ultimately, that time in the story still had to be filled. So, while there are fantastic world-building opportunities, there are also challenges, and when faced with having to do 500,000 flashbacks, Martin, of course, just continued the timeline without doing a time skip in his novels. For Blizzard, I think doing limited flashbacks and limited explainers of what has happened since, along with targeted small world updates, that could be a good way to go, if they have the time. Now, Anduin, rather notably, is missing. And the characters are basically just assuming that he's going to return when he wants to. Now this, of course, is what we expected at the end of the Shadowlands expansion, where, well, I suppose it's just this way, maybe Anduin's just soul-searching for a few years. This is fun stuff to muse about, but we do have no idea if this is Blizzard's plan. I mean, that it appeared in the alpha certainly could suggest so, but plot points have appeared in alpha and then been taken away before. This certainly would open up the way for a killer prequel novel that could fill in that time, and be an awesome read for those of us who do the reading and the books. But of course, in Ian's own words, if too much is in the novel, then it would be a narrative disruption. So, what do you think? A funny map name got data mined. Dragon Isles Underground. Warning, must be kept flagged, development map, until 10.1. Whoops. It wasn't. The warning was not heeded. So we have no idea if this will actually be the setting of 10.1. It could be an old idea. It could be just part of a 10.1 patch. But we can take it at face value. So our first raid seems to deal with Razageth, the Storm incarnate. What about the others? Well, we've got fire, we've got ice, we've got earth. Fire and earth being underground, well, that would make total sense. If the Vault of the Incarnates, where we defeat Razageth, is the 10.0 raid, which it is, by the way, then maybe 10.1 completing more of the Incarnate story, while sort of thrusting us into the broader expansion narrative arc, that could potentially make some sense. I mean, the Primalists seem to be allied with the Infinite Dragonflight, and there certainly are rumblings about Galakron's bones. There's more of that later in today's video, let me tell you. That's, I mean, all you need for an expansion in terms of plot beats, basically. Going underground, of course, would also probably see more Black Dragon story stuff continue, where, of course, we know that Rathian and Sibelian are currently vying for leadership, with you actually having a separate reputation bar for each of them, which is pretty neat. So, underground. Right, it does tie into the Incarnate threat. It could tie into whatever Titan tech is under the Isles. It does make sense for the remaining Incarnates to be there. And of course, the Black Dragons are charged with the defense of the Earth itself. So, makes sense. Alright, what else then? I want to take a moment to update you on the testing process, because this time it's been fantastic compared to the past. Feedback has already been acted on with the Drakthir Visage, and of course with numerous class talent trees as well. They recently said that actually their focus for class time, and I kind of assume their focus when actually budgeting what their staff are doing through this development cycle, that it's more focused on feedback and iteration. And so far they do seem to be making good on that. So that's nice. Now, past betas from my experience were often more focused on building systems out, right? Like your Azerite and your Covenants, but doing so to the point where there basically wasn't much time for iteration on those things, meaning that they had to launch with foundational flaws, something which partially sunk BFA and Shadowlands. I mean, unless that ripcord did actually exist. Anyway, the point is, things are kind of on the up. As planned, Blizzard also have deactivated the Azure Span. The new build gave us access to the Drakthir starting zone, as well as 2 dungeons. Not only is this honestly a bit of an exciting way to do it, like every week is kind of new and fresh, but it also produces far more targeted, actionable feedback. Hunters are then a prime example of this. Their new talent system is up, we've had a few rounds of iteration, and you can see that there have been detailed comments from the devs, and actual changes made. So it's great to see this happen. I basically say, GG, let's keep up this momentum. I cannot tell you whether this expansion will be good, but I can say that the test period does feel better than the others. The latest alpha build brought 2 dungeons, one which may tie into the underground stuff I talked about earlier, while the other one is Uldaman, the Legacy of Tyr. Yeah, I mean, the art team are completely on fire as always. Anyway, what's neat is that at the end of the dungeon, Chrono Lord Deus pops in, and he tries to stop us from gaining a disc that is apparently key to the aspects regaining their power. Now, he seems to succeed. The disc has apparently lost time. That makes me wonder if we'll get some fun time travel content. But anyway, his final line is, "The timelines are converging. There will only be one aspect, and Morozond shall be infinite." So, does that not tell us that this expansion may finally be where we see Nosdomu return? And I guess what's kind of neat is that I think this Uldaman is what we're going to get in the pre-patch. So, that's pretty fascinating, then, because of what Morozond says when we fight him in the Cataclysm expansion. So, before the fight, he says this.
"You crawl unwitting like a blind, writhing worm towards endless madness and despair. I have witnessed the true end time. This is a blessing you simply cannot comprehend."
Don't know about you, but I think that's kind of spooky. Perhaps more so, this is what he says after the fight.
"You know not what you have done, Amenthul. What I have seen."
Well then, casting doubt in the Titans. Blizzard have been doing that since at least the Cataclysm, and they've also somewhat developed that over the last few years. Also, Zovaal obviously had a larger threat in mind. Now, if Blizzard were to keep the framing of that threat wholly with Zovaal and his story, then that would be a pretty darn large failure given how lame Zovaal was. But if they were able to just continue with the plotline that they hinted at in the End Time dungeon, then that essentially would be a convenient way to sidestep Zovaal, make him feel just less relevant, less important. I think that would be a good idea. Anyway, who knows, there's probably a lore video on this topic to be made. What I do know, though, is that this all feels more Warcraft than the Shadowlands stuff did. Going into unexplored Titan Vaults, fighting infinite dragons, the mystery of what the infinite Dragonflight's goal even is. This is stuff we've been talking about since the Burning Crusade, so it's nice that a new WoW expansion is picking that up. From what I'm told, this one's actually kind of big, so I had many tweets, I had many excited stream comments as well. In case you missed it, Hearthstone has been quietly knocking it out of the park for the last few years when it comes to Warcraft narrative content that actually does feel like Warcraft. Maybe a bit more goofy sometimes, but if you play the Book of Mercenaries, you'll see the core WoW feel. Now, Reno Jackson is part of the Explorers League, a group of characters who play a central role in a few of Hearthstone's different storylines. Now, he and his friends fight many different foes, including Rafam, who is an ethereal who does things like, trying to resurrect Galakrond. You know, the planet-ending dragon threat. You kind of walk through his bones during Wrath of the Lich King. Also, Reno Jackson, he's actually a blue dragon called Renegos. So there's that. Hearthstone people basically love Rafam. He appears to be a really fun villain who's just quite well executed, and through data mining we now think he may actually be part of Dragonflight. I think that's pretty neat. Now Blizzard, of course, have got to ensure that prior Hearthstone knowledge is not needed to enjoy the character in this expansion, but at the very least, we know that he is a well-loved villain with a fantastic vocal performance that people really enjoy. So that's a great opportunity. And it does mean I need to play through all of that Hearthstone content, and someday I'll come back to you with a lower video explaining what I found. So, there we have it. Lots of news this week, actually mostly fun stuff. Of course, we're not actually at the stage of alpha where I can test endgame. And if you are suspicious about the generally positive Dragonflight mood, bear that in mind. It's not that Blizzard has showered anyone with money, at least not me, but we've seen the bit that is routinely pretty good, and one or two nice surprises, like the talents seem neat, the professions seem neat, the dragon riding's really fun, the zones are really cool. So there will be a time for critique, as there always is, and that's almost certainly going to be endgame, when we fully see gearing, we see endgame content, we see what's there for the world content. If you're kind of wondering where the criticism is, Honestly, it's that what we've seen right now is pretty damn great, but there still are unknowns for the future. Now, in case you missed our content, check out our investigation into the Sepulchre of the First Ones here. Then there's my deep dive into the Profession revamp, which is also on the channel, and this video, which is a big list of small but generally great things that we've learned about Dragonflight. And then, of course, hit up our Patreon to support my growing team and all the cool stuff that we want to make here for you. And you can even get that dope merch that is made by our Game Studios team. Wonder where that'll go next. Anyway, that's it for me. Have a great day. See you next time.